Virgo Lunar Eclipse, going over many themes. Discourse number 3. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And personal responsibility is better than obedience. Understand? Now, when we get to the personal responsibility, the obedience is to one's own institution, the institution of self. And we arrive at that clarity through Scorpio. Understand? This is when we become one with the divine in Pisces. But to become so, we have to clear the fears, the guilt, the shadows of that 12th house. Saturn is helping us to accomplish that. Understand? So obedience is required before we civilize the self. Before that we refine the self, we have to show obedience. We have to show obedience to the things that we suffered. What do we learn as a result of suffering? We have to show obedience to that. What do we know to be true? What do we know to be right? What do we know to be correct? We have to show obedience to that. Otherwise, a sacrifice will be demanded of you. If you do not have obedience, sacrifice will be demanded. And when sacrifice is demanded, you have to give up something that you value. You have to lose something that you value. You have to fall from a position that you value. You have to miss or pass up an opportunity that you value. That's sacrifice. And that's what none of us want. Now, it just so happens that's a Venus crisis. When it comes to the sacrifice, it's something within the Venus impulse of the self that you're going to have to let go of. And you have to let go with the right attitude. You have to let go without the expectation or sense of entitlement that you should have it back, knowing that it's part of the price to be paid, knowing where it came from, knowing that sometimes it comes from our insistence, sometimes it comes from our disobedience, sometimes it comes from our refusal to do what we know to be right, to do what we know to be true, to align with what we know to be true. And consequences come. A price has to be paid to move forward, to gain access, to open up the pathways for certain blessings to come through, to move forward, to remove blockages. Sacrifice are demanded of us when we lack obedience in our life. Understand? This is why our relationship with Saturn is critical. We just came out of the reality, the world where Venus was ruling the world without Saturn. They threw Saturn under the bed. They threw Saturn in the closet. They threw Saturn behind the bus. They rolled Saturn over. They want nothing to do with rules, obligations, duties, responsibility, accountability, especially the females of this country, United States of America. American females have a serious crisis with Saturn. They hate rules, they hate fathers, they hate husbands, they hate anything that carries Saturn energy. But in irony, it is their only saving grace. And this is what's being resolved with 9 working against the detriment of Venus. Obedience is better than sacrifice. When we show obedience in our life, there's less sacrifices that we have to produce to move forward. We usually see the situation where a sacrifice has to be given when it comes to a square. Anytime there's a square, a lot of times we have to expect that a sacrifice has to be given. Oppositions, sometimes this sacrifice has to be given. And you could always trace it back in the opposition. You could always trace it back in the square or other negative aspects to where our obedience, our responsibility, our wisdom was betrayed somewhere. We were imbalanced. And we have to pay the price, pay the piper to go forward. You got to pay the toll to go forward. It's expensive. It's expensive to be disobedient. It's expensive. And what disobedience looks like is, oh, this happened? Damn, you ain't know that? Oh, you ain't know that? Yeah, you knew that. You just didn't give a fuck. You want to do what you want to do. Bottom line. And personal responsibility is better than obedience. Personal responsibility, this full moon is closing our lack of personal responsibility. Okay? And the personal responsibility goes with sixth house. Taking command, taking charge, taking authority with your sixth house themes, your sixth house crisis, sixth house detriment, sixth house imbalances, sixth house misalignments. I don't need to cry to anybody else. I don't need to blame anybody else. I know where it came from. I know what happened. I know the piece that's missing. I got the screw right here and it goes right here. The screw is missing. I got it. I found it. Put the parts back together. You know what's going on in your life. You know where it came from. You know what happened. You know what happened. And you know where it happened. You know why it happened. You know why. You know exactly what happened. Personal responsibility is better than obedience. Taking initiative, in other words. Right? Where does initiative go at? Aries. Where do we have Venus? Aries, retrograde. Where do we have Mercury? Aries, retrograde. Talking about initiative. Okay? So Venus and Mercury is walking us back on lessons where we lacked initiative. Okay? Where we hesitated to take initiative. Where we hesitated to take personal responsibility and command over our life. What could have blocked that? Fear. And what happens when we listen to fear instead of show obedience to what we know and understand to be right and exact? There are consequences for that. Because that is to worship fear. And we're not here to worship fear. There's consequences for worshiping fear. You know what is right and exact. You know what is correct. But instead, you decide, or I decide, to obey fear. Now there's consequences. Personal responsibility cannot be fulfilled when we have fear, when we have guilt, when we have all these shadows of the 12th house that's lingering, these addictions, delusions, distractions, pacification, trying to pacify for the discomforts. Personal responsibility. Asserting oneself, not with aggression, assertive, not aggressive. Okay? A healthy Aries is assertive, not aggressive. There's a difference. Asserting with that Venus, asserting with that Mercury, but without the aggression, in a healthy way, in a constructive way, in a productive way, in a way that moves forward and up. Understand? To thyself do no harm, to others do no harm. My brother is safe from my tongue and my hand. This is what we need to guarantee every time. We have to use our wisdom. We have to use our wisdom. Precision cuts. Understand? Personal responsibility is better than obedience. Right foot forward. Confirm your own destiny. Practice leadership in your own life, in your own circle, with yourself. With yourself. Lead for yourself. Take command for yourself. Take charge for yourself. Have courage. Be bold. Initiate. March forward. Set up your own marching orders. You know what's supposed to be done. You know what's required. Prepare yourself. Get conditioned. Get conditioned. Align. Become qualified. Become competent. Become capable. Become. And become so that there's no way that you could be turned down. That it's impossible for any opportunity to say no. It's impossible for you to be rejected because you became the one. Personal responsibility. This could be the case in relationships. This could be the case in the workplace. This could be the case with your children, your family, your marriage, whatever the case may be. But take an initiative. When we fail to take initiative, we could get into blaming other people for the outcome, resenting other people who do take initiative and they get what it is that you wanted, but you didn't assert yourself to get what you wanted because you wanted to worship your fears instead. Now you salty at the other person who led with the right foot. But you didn't want to lead with the right foot. Like James Brown said, you got to get on the good foot. Got to get on the good foot. Understand? Now, a lot of people don't want to be told what to do. You don't like taking directions. You don't like taking instructions. You can't stand with somebody tell you what to do. You can't stand with somebody giving you orders. But if nobody's telling you what to do, will you get your fucking ass up and do what you're supposed to do? Answer that. If there's nobody micromanaging you, can you trust yourself to do what you know to be right and exact? Will you take command of the post that you know you have the capacity and competence for, the experience for, the strength for? Oh no, you just gonna cry and leave it on somebody else to do it. Complain, complain, complain. But the other person reaps the rewards and benefits of seizing that destiny. You get left behind. Now you feeling sour and salty. Blame the world. I'm a victim. Why everybody always picking on me? Personal responsibility is better than obedience. You will have to obey somebody else, somebody else's rules, somebody else's laws. You will have to fulfill somebody else's ideal, dream, vision, wish. When you fail to have your own ideal, dream, vision, or wish, along with the strength and health and will, courage to act on it. There's plenty of cowards out here who like to play the sideline, the cheerleader, the spectator. They watch people who have the strength to act on their thought. People who have the courage to initiate their thought. People who have personal responsibility to do what they know to be right and exact to do. And as they do it, they will criticize, they will judge, they will have a whole lot to say, but they never bent their back, they never bent their knee. They never used their strength to do it. And there's a lot of people who don't have the strength to bring into existence the thought that comes to the mind. A lot of people that don't have the courage to initiate the thought that comes into the mind. And it could be something as simple as the smoke detector, okay? The smoke detector is constantly chirping in the house. 5 people living in there listening to the smoke detector. Nobody gets a ladder, steps up there and change the battery. But as soon as somebody gets a ladder to change the battery, you got somebody standing there with a coffee mug. Oh, nah, you should have got the other kind of battery. Nah, that ain't how you do it. Nah, that ain't the way you do it. Okay, well, why don't you get your fucking ass up here and do it? You wait till somebody else get up there and do it, then you got so much to say about the person who is doing it. The spectators, the sideline watchers, the people who guard the water cooler. Understand, personal responsibility. What can you do? What are you in position to do for yourself? What are you in position to do to change your reality, your situation, your circumstance, the outcome, the results that you have been getting? What can you invest in concerning yourself to change all of that? Some things have to end, some things have to close with this full moon lunar eclipse, Virgo. And these are things that we really need to think about and consider. Do you find yourself having to show obedience to other people who show personal responsibility? Or can you figure out a way to show personal responsibility so that you can show obedience to yourself because you can be trusted? Because you have that autonomy. You have that self-governance. Understand, that maturity. Self knows when self can be trusted. Believe that. And you radiate that energy outwards. And people know if you could be trusted, if you're competent. People know. Because they pick it up off of you. Because you radiate your own knowing of yourself, or lack thereof. You radiate it. And they pick it up. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And personal responsibility is better than obedience. How can you apply this to your life right now? How can you make a change right now in your life to where this makes sense? That's the missing piece. Where can you put this, plug this in right now in your life where it makes sense? Come on, let's do the work. And it is written, first book Samuel 15:22. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than fat of rams. To hearken than fat of rams. Some of us, we have listening problems. We have a hard time listening to guidance, instructions, good advice. We have a hard time listening to our inner child. We have a hard time listening to our intuition, our instincts. And some of this could be as simple as not trusting ourselves. And we've gotten a glimpse of that through the Aries Chiron transit. Venus and Mercury are going back over what Aries Chiron has already accomplished. So now that that has been accomplished and healed, okay, we're learning how to walk with it in the astral body and in the ethereal body as well, through Venus and Mercury. So the astral and ethereal body is having a walk down through Aries, where we used to have hesitation, where we used to have doubt, where we used to have very negative conversations about ourselves, very negative talk about ourselves. To obey is better than sacrifice. To show obedience, sometimes you have to have courage. You have to have guts. You didn't think about that, did you? Because what is it that you're obeying? The divine voice, the small, still voice of God within, the inner child, the instinct, the intuition, just as I name, your own vision, your own calling. That which you know must be done. Answering to who you know you are, responding, standing up to it, and pursuing it, going after it. Oh, but you prefer to worship the fears, wherever they come from. Your neighbor, family member, critics, co-workers, everything and everybody that tells you you can't or you won't. You listen to it. You submit to it. And then you become bitter because you waste away talking about what you could have done. We have listening problems. How many of us have created circumstances in our life, experiences in our life that we regret, that are embarrassing, humiliating, painful, that cost us great sacrifice, only because we didn't listen to our intuition, only because we didn't listen to our instincts. See, that was a missed opportunity where we could have showed obedience and avoided a sacrifice. Understand, we could have listened and shown obedience to the intuition and to the instincts and avoided sacrifice. This time, maybe we will know better. Maybe we will know better. Now, I'm going to close with this on the sisters out there, right? All over the internet, hear people crying. Oh, he did this and he did that. He ain't no good. All these other things. But women, they have this well-known attribute, or faculty, I should say, of having an enhanced intuition. How do you have an enhanced intuition and still keep having bastard child after bastard child with the worst of our members of society over and over again? Everybody knows you have an enhanced intuition. The problem is that you refuse to obey it. You refuse to show obedience. So now you have to sacrifice. You sacrifice your reputation. You sacrifice your freedom. You sacrifice all of the decisions that you wanted to make instead with your freedom. You sacrifice your purity, your chastity. You sacrifice an opportunity to marry someone who is suitable because you fucked up your reputation. Don't nobody want to deal with all that shit. Disobedience is very expensive. We have to learn to listen and show obedience to our intuition and our instincts. We have to learn to listen. Show obedience. Otherwise, a sacrifice will be required, and it is quite expensive. Quite expensive. That can mean passing up opportunities, closed doors. You could miss one for an entire lifetime. Something that you knew you were destined for, but you fucked it up. Now you got to go to the grave with it. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. The fat of rams referring to things that you really value, valuable things, things that are cherished, things that are considered a delicacy and value in life. How many things do you have to give up every season? How many things do you have to pass up every season that you considered as valuable, something that you preferred to keep? Only because you're hard-headed, you don't listen. Not just talking to you, talking to myself too. All of us, we all in this. This is what we all do. And we could get better. Understand?